Deemed, rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
Welcome to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. I'm sure many of you, or if not all of you, heard Joe Biden's press conference yesterday, where essentially he admitted that we spent approximately $1 million to destroy an air balloon or an object in the sky that was not a threat. I'm not even sure if I believe the guy, to be frank with you. The reason being is because he also said in that press briefing, if you will, that the military essentially gave him the okay. Like, who's running the show? The military recommended that he shoot down these other objects out of an abundance of caution. What the heck is going on? He is the commander in chief. They let him know what's happening, and then he makes the call. And I'm not sure that I believe him as well, simply because, I mean, think about this. The military recommended that we shoot him down. Why would the military recommend that we shoot him down if they were not a threat? None of this stuff makes sense to me. I don't know what to believe, but if it was indeed innocent, or if these objects weren't something to be concerned about, then I would caution every single one of you RC enthusiasts that happen to have toy drones, radio control airplanes, do not fly too high in the sky over your yard. Otherwise, an F-16 fighter may come and shoot your toy down. This is how nonsensical this stuff is getting. But this is the Biden administration. Guys, don't believe a word they say. We are absolutely screwed with this guy and his administration, his minions in the White House and in charge. It is a sad state of affairs. There's no doubt about it. But now, I want to talk to you about my Jackson's 5 today on the headlines. All right, plenty of stuff still going on. You still have the Ohio. There's still a lot of fallout from the Palestine-Ohio train derailment, where literally an axle was on fire for 20 miles. And for some reason, no one saw that before this train was derailed. No one seems to care, including the governor of Pennsylvania and the governor, Mark DeWine of Ohio. I don't know why Ohioans voted for Mark DeWine. That guy is a rhino through and through. The only thing he gave you was at the last minute in last year's election, he was like, okay, constitutional carry. We'll satisfy all of you guys with constitutional carry. He sucks on everything else. Obviously. And now he's having to backtrack because there's nothing to be concerned about in Ohio, in Palestine, Ohio. Meanwhile, you have people that live there in videos. I watched a video this morning where one chick threw a rock in the creek and all of these toxins, oil-like sheen, just raised up from the bottom of the creek. One rock, and then you could see it just raise up for a good, I don't know. It must have been 20, 30, 40 feet of stuff that just rose up from the bottom. It's absolutely disgusting. That explains why their fish are dying. Animals are dying there. The people have skin irritation, throat irritation. It's absolutely insane. And yet we're being told nothing to worry about, nothing to see here. It's a complete and utter lie. Do not trust this government, especially given the fact that we have a corrupt dementia patient in the White House. Do not believe any of these people. Pete Buttigieg, on this story, this guy is out. What a jerk. This guy is out trying to blame Donald Trump for his failings. Hat tip Breitbart. U.S. Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg is blaming former President Donald Trump for the train disaster in East Palestine, Ohio, claiming, quote, "We're constrained by the law on some areas of rail regulation," close quote, and citing a, quote, "breaking rule," close quote, that was withdrawn under the Trump administration. All right. Now, Breitbart says, while it is true that in 2018, the DOT, Department of Transportation, withdrew a proposed rule requiring trains carrying certain dangerous chemicals to use electronically controlled pneumatic brakes, this rule would not have applied to the train that derailed in East Palestine on February 3rd. In addressing the train derailment on Tuesday, Buttigieg claimed, and I quote, "We're constrained by law in some areas of rail regulation He cited the breaking rule that had been withdrawn by the Trump administration in 2018 because of a law passed by Congress in 2015. So shouldn't he be blaming the Obama administration? No, he shouldn't blame either. It is Biden who is in charge. It is Democrats who are in charge. For the last couple of years, they've controlled the House, they've controlled the Senate, and they controlled the White House. It isn't until January that Republicans have come in, and yet the Democrats still control the Senate. So it's going to be hard to get any legislation passed. This prick is not ready for prime time, nor was he. He is all about social justice. Even yesterday, he was a couple of hundred miles or a few hundred miles away from East Palestine talking about climate change and greening and structural jobs and all this kind of stuff and equity and all that kind of nonsense and safety. The guy is a complete and utter fraud. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's a complete incompetent. All these guys do is they theorize. They pay lots of money to go to these schools to sound smart, but they're dumb as hell. And that's exactly what you have with Pete Buttigieg. There's absolutely no wisdom. There's absolutely no common sense. And there's no ability to be able to understand problems and come up with a solution. And unfortunately, when it comes to the Democrat Party, that's oftentimes a resume enhancement. All right, guys, let's get to the Jackson's 5. But first, let me talk to you about my sponsors, MyPillow.com. Mike Lindell doing great work at MyPillow.com, providing American-made products, American jobs, and products that, listen, just great products. Great products. The latest product is the MyPillow 2.0. It comes with this new material on top that makes it even more comfortable and breathable and cool. But you still have the patented filler that's inside, just like the original MyPillow. So you're going to love it. It's just MyPillow, but even better, if you can imagine. So go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Carl, or click, at the top of the page, go to the radio listener square, click on the radio listener square, use the promo code Carl, CARL, or give them a call at 800-858-0263. That is 800-858-0263. Guys, and it's not just My Pillows. Anything that's available on that site, you use that promo code Carl. There are discounts available to my listeners for up to 70% off. MyPillow.com, promo code Carl. And don't forget, do not forget For Patriots. Guys, let me tell you something. The people in East Palestine could use For Patriots products right now, could use their survival kits. They're easily stackable. They're water resistant. You're going to love these products. Keep your family safe just in case. You never know what's going to happen. Look at Turkey, Syria, the earthquake there. I mean, it could be a natural disaster or it could be a political disaster like we see in the White House. You just never know what's going to happen. So go to 4Patriots, the number 4Patriots.com. Use the promo code Carl. You'll get 10% off of your first purchase. This includes a 3-month survival kit. You'll get a year-long guarantee plus free shipping on orders that are over $97. They're called 4 Patriots because a portion of every sale goes to veterans or goes to charities. I'm sorry, that helps out veterans and their families. The number 4Patriots.com, 25-year survival food just in case. Guys, don't go without it. I believe in it. We have some here at my house. I believe in these products, and I hope you will too, just for the sake of the safety of your own family. All right, so now get into these Jackson's 5. Oh, and by the way, please subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. Please subscribe on YouTube. We really need more of you there. If you would subscribe to our YouTube channel, like, rate, review it, that would definitely help us go a long way and grow up the charts. I really appreciate that. Some new listeners that have been tuning in that are just finding me. Thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate it. If you would share the podcast, we would genuinely appreciate that. We're in this fight for freedom with you, the restoration of Judeo-Christian values, the restoration of the Bill of Rights, Constitution, and the middle class. That is what we are about at the Carl Jackson Show podcast. So here are the 5 that really touched me today. I was just checking to make sure that there was no breaking news. All right, number 1, Jim Jordan and the committee on what I'm going to do is just mention these and then I'm going to circle back. You know what I'm saying? All right, Jim Jordan and the committee on and his Judiciary Committee are going to be looking into the weaponization of government to investigate the State Department. That is a very good thing. I'll circle back on that news. Don Lemon, as Tucker Carlson calls him, claims Nikki Haley isn't in her prime. And we've got some audio and a video for you. So make sure you go to youtube.com so you can check out the video. But I'm going to talk about that, opine on that real quick. Also, a couple of stories I'm doing, sometimes, all right, it's the Jackson's 5, but I cheat sometimes. I'm not going to lie to you. Sometimes some of the stories are so good, or some of them tie together. You just have to bring them up. And that isn't to say there's a lot of stories out there, but these are some of the ones that I think probably impact you most for the on any given day. And number 3, unvaccinated New York City teachers fingerprints are sent to the FBI. Files flagged with problem. This is a big freaking deal. We live in an authoritarian state. I'm sorry, the left are a bunch of tyrants. They're the fascists. Everything they call us, that's just projection, because it's exactly what they're doing to us. But a lot of their voters are so low information and so dumbed down when it comes to politics. They believe that is true about us. All right, here's the fourth thing. John Fetterman checks into the hospital for depression. I'm going to circle back on that and give you my take on that, because I really think that it's a very frustrating state of affairs, and it's a very sad state of affairs when it comes to John Fetterman, all of which was preventable. But we will talk about that in just a second. And then this actually relates to number 5. Remember that British Christian that was praying in her mind? She wasn't praying out loud, but some British officers asked her the question, "Are you praying?" She wasn't praying out loud. And I mean, they literally have thought police in the UK. Well, thank God she's been acquitted of charges for silently praying outside of abortion clinics. The UK is, honestly, it's really disconcerting to see where the left is. It really is. When you abandon God, you start finding new gods, and that's what we see taking shape in the West, whether it's Europe, whether it's the United States of America. Oh, another mass fire breaks out at a nursery in Florida. More toxic fumes. Oh, my God. Who would have guessed? Me. Look out for these things. More of them appear to be happening now. This one is happening in my own backyard right here in Orlando, Florida. Kissimmee is basically where the big mouse is located. Disney World, and I think someone set the fire. I'm only speculating, but we'll talk about that real briefly here. All right, so let's just hit these real quick. Gabe, if you would be ready with that Don Lemon video in just a second here, because I want to make sure that I comment on that. But let's go back to number 1. Jim Jordan and the Committee on Weaponization of Government to Investigate State Department hat tipped the Washington Examiner, Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio, good Lord, I just screwed up, and Matt Gaetz of Florida are vowing to investigate the State Department for bankrolling a quote-unquote disinformation tracking group that is, as the Washington Examiner revealed, secretly blacklisting and taking steps to defund conservative media outlets. This is our State Department doing this. Tell me we don't live under an authoritarian government, and better yet, an administrative state. Why this story should concern every single one of you out there is because we go to the ballot box, regardless of what you may think about elections right now. We go to the ballot box. So what do? We vote for people, right? People that we believe are going to represent us. We don't vote for the State Department that bankrolls disinformation tracking groups. And when I say disinformation, it's people that disagree with those people in the State Department that we never vote for. This is what I hate about the administrative state. This is why you have to be concerned with federal regulation. Oftentimes, these bureaus exist in order to circumvent the will of we the people. And so be very careful. When you say, I want regulation, regulation, be very careful, because you may just get what you asked for, and that is slavery. All right. That is slavery. No representation whatsoever. So please be very slow to say we need to regulate this and we need to regulate that. There are some things on a state and local level that may need to be regulated, but I'm growing increasingly displeased, dissatisfied, and just I have a bunch of distrust for these major bureaucracies. And I, in fact, believe many of them could be and should be shut down altogether. All right. So again, Washington Examiner revealed secret blacklisting and the State Department taking steps to defund conservative media outlets. Republican lawmakers have continued to raise concerns over two State Department-backed entities, the National Endowment for Democracy. Isn't that amazing? Amazing. Democracy. Whenever you hear democracy in a title, I always know they're fascists, or most of the time. And the Global Engagement Center. Global, that should be a red flag right there, granting $665,000 combined between 2020 and 2021 to the Global Disinformation Index. Now, so that's your taxpayer money going to that. Your taxpayer money goes to a State Department that calls you that says we're spreading disinformation because we disagree with them politically. Now, Jordan and Gates are setting their sights on an investigation into this funding through the newly created Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government. Good for them. Now, here it comes. Here it comes. The manliest of men, Don Lemon. I want you to hear this audio clip. Gabe, track this audio clip because we need to cut this out and share it separately on YouTube, por favor. But I want you guys to hear the infamous Don Lemon talk about ladies in their prime. Now, before we go to this video, before I have Gabe go to this video, guys, I want you to understand this. I've been trying to check myself. I am a Christian. I don't want to be unnecessarily mean. I really don't. I do believe the left is evil, and I do believe that we need to fight them with everything that is within us. But sometimes I get a little frustrated, and I may say names that I don't really mean, or I just say in frustration at the time. I do have to say this, and I mean this with all due respect. Don Lemon has to be one of the biggest morons on TV. And I'm trying not to be mean, but every time I see this guy, I get so frustrated that I've not reached his level. I'm just being honest. I'm a human being. All right. I look at this guy and I'm like, how the heck do you make it to primetime television? Well, now not primetime. He's on in the morning. But how do you make it to that level being as dumb as you are? And I'm trying not to be mean, but I want you to listen to this audio clip. And I want you to watch the video. Watch the video. All right. The Carl Jackson Show on YouTube.com. All right. So watch the video. I want you to listen to what this guy says. And I guarantee you something is going to ring true in your head that I'm going to reinforce right after the video. Let's go ahead and roll it, Gabe.
Nikki Haley isn't in her prime. Sorry. When a woman is considered to be in her prime in her 20s and 30s and maybe 40s.
What are you talking? Wait.
That's not according to me.
Prime for what?
It depends. I mean, it's just like prime. If you look it up, if you Google when is a woman in her prime, it'll say 20s, 30s, and 40s.
So let's have a little chatty chat.
All right, so that's Dana Lash. We can cut off Dana Lash. Love Dana Lash, but you're gonna hear my commentary here. Okay, so you just heard Don Lemon say that women are in their primes, 20s, 30s, and maybe 40s. Let's think about this for a split second. What comes to mind? What comes to mind? Pregnancy. This dude didn't realize that whatever he looked up on Google was talking about prime as far as birth, women giving birth. This guy, even though he doesn't have tons of viewers, he has lots of influence. Lots more influence than you and I. This guy is on CNN. He should not have a job. They critique us on being bloggers. This guy should be a blogger. He wouldn't succeed. I don't know how he is where he is. I suspect it's affirmative action or a diversity hire, a gay dude that happens to be black. But oh my goodness, If you have such a low IQ, like this guy appears, and he's arrogant about it. He's trying to backtrack. He started backtracking right away. He's gotten a lot of blowback from this. And deservedly so. I guess I'm not. I don't want to say the guy should be fired over this. Actually, I'm not going to say that. But I think CNN should start paying attention to his ratings. All right. Everybody else has to live by that standard. So should he. This guy shouldn't get a pass because he's black and gay. Obviously, there's not a lot of brain cells up there. Okay. Moving on. Moving on to the third thing. Man, I so want to talk about this, but I'm going to leave it for another day. LGBT group attacks New York Times trans coverage, make demands of the news outlet. Actually, man, now I just want you to understand, people are starting to grow weary of this LGBTQ movement. All right, so I just want you to understand that. Very, very good news, in my opinion. Even the New York Times is starting to have it up to here with them because these guys are just going too far left. Okay, so here's a story. Unvaccinated New York City teachers' fingerprints sent to the FBI, files flagged with problem. Okay, this is so scary. It's not even funny. This is tyranny. All right, this is tyranny in New York tyranny. Unvaccinated New York City teachers were reportedly, quote unquote, flagged and their fingerprints sent to the FBI, according to an affidavit filed in federal court last week. What? Their fingerprints were sent to the FBI. This, according to an affidavit filed in a federal court last week, because the FBI and New York City officials don't want people to have autonomy over their own bodies. Do you understand how dangerous, how crazy this is? How you should never, the Democrat Party is evil. You should never want to be a part of this Democrat Party. This is what they do. They lie and say, what Republicans do you know are asking for your fingerprints or want to file your fingerprints with the FBI because you either did or did not take the vaccine? Tell me one. Freaking insane. In the New York, how you vote for a Democrat is beyond me. These people are everything they claim the right is. In the New Yorkers, for Religious Liberty Inc. versus the City of New York appeals hearing challenging the now rescinded vaccine mandate for city employees, plaintiff's attorney John Birch said that quote, flagged unquote teachers were labeled with quote unquote problem codes that impact their ability to get another job. Unbelievable. So these people, if they didn't take the jab, they had a hard time finding jobs elsewhere if they didn't comply to remain teachers in New York City. Fingerprints sent to the FBI for what? Criminal investigation? To create a list? They want to create a list of people that don't comply because they want to know the people that they have to destroy first. Because a lot of people are just going to vote for Democrats either because they're low information voters or because they're scared and they don't have a lot of courage. And I understand this stuff could get scary, but you cannot comply. This is who your Democrat Party is today. Now, this relates to another story. So this is Carl Jackson's 5+ bonus. I'm cheating a little bit. British Christian acquitted of charges for silently praying outside abortion clinics. I mentioned this, but guys, if we get to the point where we have thought police, and which we do, remember the Democrats try to fund or start this disinformation branch within the federal government. I forgot that chick, Nina Jankowicz, I believe was her name. This is scary. This is where the left wants to go. You can't even think the wrong thoughts. Who has that type of power? Who has that type of power? Even God doesn't do that. This is scary, man. This is scary. All right, so now this. Let me John Fetterman checks into a hospital for depression. Okay. So guys, we all knew this was coming, not necessarily depression, but we all know that that John Fetterman isn't going to last 6 years in the Senate. And I'm telling you, initially you hear this story And at least I did. I got really upset because a lot of voters, this guy should have never run. All right. He should have never run. He should have never been allowed to run. And I feel sorry for the voters, except the voters that voted for him. I hope you guys get horrible representation. But unfortunately, we know that because you voted for him, everyone is going to get horrible representation. So not only are you not going to get the representation that you thought you were going to get in Pennsylvania, I want to tell you this is a solid example of how evil the left is. I actually feel very sorry for John Fetterman. I really do. I really do. You know, at first my initial reaction was, and then it was like, I actually feel sorry for this guy. I really do. He had that stroke. The DNC, the Democrat Party, hid it from everyone. I know he played a part in this. I get that. I think his wife is a little tyrant too, and she's money and power hungry as well, just like Jill Biden. All right. So, but this guy is not physically capable of being a senator. He's not mentally capable. We know now. But here's where it gets really insidious. The Democrat Party knew this all along. And just like they're doing with Joe Biden in the White House, they don't care about people. They don't care about people. They don't care about this guy's health. They care about power. So even though they know the guy cannot even understand, he has auditory problems understanding. Now he's in depression. He's far away from his family. He's dealing with staff members. He's meeting for the first time. He can no longer hide his frailties. So the guy slips into depression. That's what's happening here. And the Democratic Party doesn't give a damn because all they care about is power. That's what's happening. That's the sad story. A guy that's physically ill, mentally ill, and he doesn't even have a family member nor a party that cares for him enough to say, John, you're not well. Someone else needs to step up. The Democrat Party is evil. John Fetterman proves it. He proves it to me. All right, now, last thing here on Jackson's 5. Mass fire breaks out at a nursery in Florida. In Florida, firefighters are responding to a massive industrial fire in Kissimmee. This was yesterday. Florida that broke out behind a manufacturer of plastic nursery and greenhouse supplies. It's amazing how a lot of these greenhouse supplies are very toxic when they catch on fire. Almost as if the green energy, global warming, climate change stuff isn't what it portends to be. But anyway, so greenhouse supplies, plastic nursery catches on fire just a few miles away from Walt Disney World. Officials said about 2 acres of pallets that had plastic planters on them were set ablaze before spreading into a 5-acre inferno. No firefighters or civilians have yet been harmed as workers were evacuated from the area. I hope that is the case today. The plant itself is not ablaze, and first responders have worked to slow the fire's progress, according to officials. But the same chemicals that were spewing, or some of the same chemicals that were spewing into the air in Palestine, Ohio, were also spewing into the air right here in Kissimmee, Florida, right in our backyard. Guys, this green nonsense is a joke. These people don't mean it. All of this stuff is about power and control. I think God knows better about the environment than John Kerry does. I believe he knows what he knows what he's doing. Guys, listen, I have this great interview. Stay tuned for this great interview, man. We have Jack Cashill coming on. He's going to be talking to us about Seth Rich. There's a lot of stuff, new stuff that's coming out about Seth Rich, and some that isn't necessarily new, but being confirmed. I have no doubt in my mind that Seth Rich was killed. In my opinion, I'll say this, in my opinion, I think it was a hit job. I really do. Jack Cashill, we're going to be talking to him next, and you'll be able to make up your own mind. All right, before we go to Jack, just a reminder, please follow us on all things social media, The Carl Jackson Show. The Carl Jackson Show. We would really appreciate it. Go to YouTube, subscribe there, thecarljacksonshow.com. You can check out Jack there. He's coming up. He's coming up next. And don't forget our sponsors, mypillow.com. Mypillow.com. Use the promo code, or the radio listener square, at the top of the page. Use the promo code Carl, or give them a call, 800-858-0263. 4patriots.com, the number 4patriots.com. You can do the same thing. Use the promo code Carl. Get 10% off of your first purchase. Any purchase that's over $97, you'll get a year-long guarantee plus free shipping. Also, this purchase includes our 3-month survival kit. So go to 4Patriots, the number 4patriots.com. Use the promo code Carl. Not only will you help your family, but a portion of every sale goes to help out charities that it helps out veterans and their families. So you get a twofer. All right. You get a twofer. 4patriots.com. All right, guys, here we go. Looking forward to speaking to Jack Cashill about Seth Rich. This is going to be juicy. Guys, you are going to really enjoy today's podcast. We're going to be talking about Seth Rich. Seth Rich, you guys may know, a DNC data analyst that wound up dead. I want to get into this. You know, if you guys would have asked me a couple of years ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, if this was just a conspiracy theory, if this was something more was, I don't know. I wasn't sure. A couple of years ago, I'm like, it sounds fishy. But now, given the fact that we know that our DOJ and FBI seem to be corrupt as all get out, I don't trust these institutions anymore, and I'm questioning everything. And I think we need to re-examine everything, including Seth Rich. And so that's why I'm glad to have Jack Cashill on. He's been writing about this stuff extensively at AM Greatness. I've read some of his columns. So, Jack, I'm so happy to have you on the Carl Jackson Show podcast.
Hey, Carl, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure. And you're right. This is a story that in another time, in another place, you would just say, well, bad things happen, just people do get murdered and on the streets of Washington. He wasn't the first one. But the circumstances surrounding his death are such that, now 7 years later, you cannot just turn your head and say that to be true.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. There were a couple of columns, but one in particular that I read of yours. What was CrowdStrike doing with Seth Rich's laptop? I think there was some bombshell information in that particular column, and with this new information or evidence that CrowdStrike had a hold or took a hold of Seth Rich's laptop. Will you first do this for us, Jack? Would you please just kind of walk us through what happened with Seth Rich? And I'm talking about his murder and his background, his job background, just so that people are refreshed with the story in and of itself.
Yeah, unlike other people identified with the Clintons who die, let's say Vince Foster, who was found dead in a park 30 years ago. The question is, was he murdered or was he not? Well, in Seth Rich's case, we know he was murdered. He was a 27-year-old data analyst for the DNC. This is just weeks before the Democratic National Convention in 2016. He's walking home from a bar in the northwest section of District of Columbia, where the condos run upwards of $1 million. And it's a nice neighborhood. He's taking an unusually long time to get home for whatever reason. And at about 3:30 on that morning of July 10th, Sunday morning, he is murdered. The assailants, and I believe there's two of them, they beat him up first because he has the facial wounds and the defensive wounds to validate that thesis, and then they shoot him in the back twice. But what's unusual about this murder on the streets of Washington is the would-be robbers do not take his wallet, do not take his cell phone, do not take his watch, do not take his jewelry. And they depart. They leave him on the street. People find him. He's still alive. Take him to the hospital where he dies a couple hours later. There's some mystery about what he said or didn't say during that period. You cannot expect much help from the authorities. Now, and this was in the hands of the Metropolitan Police and D.C. Police, and for all we know, that it stayed in those hands for years. That was the story. The FBI had no interest in this case. It was just a murder, a street murder. What do we care? Well, what happens is that about 3 weeks later, Julian Assange, the WikiLeaks founder, is speaking to a Dutch TV host on a TV show.
Right.
And he's talking about the risks his sources run. And the Dutch host says, like, for instance, he goes, well, take for instance the case of that young man in Washington D.C. who was murdered on the streets, on July 10th.
Isn't that amazing?
And then the Dutch host is primed just the way American TV hosts are. Someone probably whispering in his ear right then, saying, "No, it wasn't a murder. It was a botched robbery.
Right.
That's all it was."
Right,
So
right.
the Dutch host comes out and says, "Yeah, it was just a robbery. It was just a robbery." And Julian Assange corrects him and says, "No, that was not a robbery. Nothing was stolen." Right. So what's curious about this, and no, what would have been curious about this, Carl, a generation ago, is the lack of curiosity by the Washington media, right? Because here you have a DNC data analyst murdered on the streets of Washington. About 2 weeks later, there's a big dump of data from the DNC that had been exfiltrated from their computers. And they've been fearful of this because the invasion into the computer took place in April. In April, the DNC, instead of calling the FBI saying, "Hey, someone's broken into our computers," called CrowdStrike, which is a privately owned cybersecurity firm that's fully aligned with the Democratic Party. Its head
Let me interrupt you for just a second here, Jack,
Sure.
because I want to make sure that people catch this. This is a very important point that Jack is making. And by the way, Jack, where do people, if people want to get a hold of you, if people want to find you online, what are the best places to do that or to find
the best place is just go to my website, cashill.com, CASHILL.com. And I'm on Twitter as Jack Cashill. I mean, I don't have any code names or anything. So, yeah.
All right. Okay. So this is a very important point that Jack is about to make, because CrowdStrike, what the heck is a DNC used, I guess, cybersecurity company doing with this guy's laptop before FBI? I'm not sure if it was before
the FBI, sure.
Before police even. Why didn't the police? I guess the police wouldn't really care about this. All they care about is the murder or the crime itself. But DNC data analysts, CrowdStrike gets a hold of it before the FBI. This is very suspicious to me.
He had two laptops. One was the business laptop, which is the one that the CrowdStrike got a hold of. And then there was a personal laptop back at his apartment in D.C. And they got a hold of the business laptop, probably routinely as part of their audit of the DNC back in April of 2016. And but what's curious is that instead of going to the FBI, this is a major, break-in, presumably to their computers, and with the implications. Julian Assange is already saying he's got the information, and then to verify that he has information, like maybe a week before the Democratic National Convention, he drops this trove of information. It showed basically that the DNC had basically rigged the primary process to allow Hillary to beat, Bernie Sanders, who's always getting screwed by his own party,
And allegedly, Seth Rich was he wanted Bernie Sanders to win. That's what I've heard. Is that
right? It was rumored, I think, pretty accurately that he was a Bernie guy, and it was not it's understandable. Half of the Democrats were, maybe more.
Sure.
And especially for the young guys, like Seth is only 27 years old. What's curious too is that the DNC went to first. They turned to their law firm of Perkins Coie. You probably heard of these guys.
Yes, the famous Russia collusion hoax law firm. Yes,
that's right. They're the same people who gave us the Steele dossier. Right. And they're the same people, and a lot of people don't know this. They're the same people who went to Hawaii allegedly and came back with Barack Obama's birth certificate. They were fighting the birth certificate war from 2008 on, when a fellow Democrat launched the demand to see the information. So Perkins Coie is totally implicated in everything.
Okay.
Big, powerful D.C. law firm. So they dumped the data before the Democratic convention. It really puts a tarnish on the convention. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is fired as head of the DNC. They replace her with Donna Brazile, who will come into the story in a while. So they're pretty rattled by this. But it's a story with such implications, especially after Julian Assange talks about this. It just dies in Washington. The major media show no interest whatsoever in a story that has all of the earmarks of a great intrigue,
Right.
And then some other things begin to happen, but very slowly. In just before Christmas, after the election, after the election, they're like the day after the election, literally 2016, November. This woman named Ellen Ratner is appearing.
Jack, go back to that name, please. For some reason, the microphone, you just went out on me.
The woman's name is Ellen Ratner. She's like a B-grade media Democrat talking head, right? Kind of shows up when they need someone to fill in. And she is, her brother Michael, however, was Julian Assange's attorney. He was a radical leftist attorney who died of natural causes, which is unusual in this world, of cancer sometime earlier that year of 2016. So she goes to, she meets with Assange at some point during this process at the Ecuadorian embassy in London. And she's on a panel discussion, a totally obscure academic panel discussion the day after the election, talking about the election results. And midway through the 2-hour interview, she just drops this bombshell. She says, I met with Julian Assange, and now she's arguing against interest here. She has no interest in spreading a conspiracy because she's a Democrat, a Hillary supporter. And he told me that that the data was not a Russian breach of the computers, but rather it had been exfiltrated from inside. Right. And that it had come from, a jump drive. I mean, the data had been taken. And then privately, she talked to a friend of hers, a guy named Ed Butowski, who was also a B-grade TV analyst type. And they had met in green rooms back and forth. Butowski's a Republican. And she tells Butowski, listen, Julian Assange told me that, and she didn't say it in the interview, but she tells him this privately, that the people responsible were Seth Rich and his brother Aaron, right? And he wanted the parents to know that there may be reasons for them to be suspicious of his death. So Butowski, who's Jewish, as are the Riches, this is the Rich family, he works his way through the rabbi in Omaha, where the Rich's family live. And he contacts them, and through the rabbi, he contacts the Riches and says, listen, this is what Julian Assange has to say. He said that your son was killed because he was my source, and that Aaron is probably at risk as well, brother Aaron. And so they commissioned Butowski to hire a private detective to investigate this case. Now, things go awry here. The guy he hires doesn't work out. There's problems and counter charges. Pressure is getting to them. I'm sure the Democrats get to the Riches, and I probably some combination of carrots and sticks telling them to stay away from this story. You know? Right. I mean, it's sort of like I'm just imagining here, and I don't know that this is true, but like the Kopechne family after Mary Jo dies in Ted Kennedy's car, they're quiet. They're not out there, holding press conferences demanding justice. They have a lot of ways to keep people on board. Plus, the Riches are loyal Democrats. I mean, it's a Democratic family. So,
Jack, go ahead.
Fox ends up getting sued for even talking about this story on the air. And it could have died right there. But a friend of Butowski's, an attorney named Ty Clevenger, a Texas guy, just like Butowski, takes on the case. And he has a proxy client that he's working through. And he starts, sending FOIAs to the FBI. It takes him years. And then he finds out, after years and years, that they have his laptop. And they've always had his laptop. And not only does the FBI not have it, but CrowdStrike is still holding onto his laptop and hasn't shared the information. The FBI doesn't want to know. It's like Hunter Biden's laptop.
Yeah,
They don't want to know about these laptops, you know?
It's
So,
amazing. Amazing.
That is kind of where it stands right now. We now know that the people who gave us the Steele dossier, the people who gave us the birth certificate, are the people now who are and have hold of Seth Rich's laptop. And even though the Washington Post, they totally ignored the story, New York Times, Donna Brazile, who goes on the head the DNC, until she loses that job for feeding debate secrets to Hillary Clinton. These people are tripped. But in 2017, she writes a book called Hacks, Hacks, and she dedicates it to Seth Rich, which is interesting.
Do you think that was just a dig, or you? I mean,
I think it was her way of saying, "I don't believe what I'm being told."
Wow. Okay, that makes sense.
And what she does, she speculates in the book as to why he was killed. And that she dares to bring it up is so against the orthodoxy of that establishment, because we're not supposed to talk about this at all. I mean, Fox News was sued out of even talking about it. And, you know, when I talk to you, Carl, I just stick to facts. I just tell you what I know, and I'm confident saying it's true. They're not going to come after you or me, but it's there are a set of facts. One is that he's dead. He's murdered. And they believe there are two assailants. I have excellent reason to believe they were speaking Spanish at the time of the murder. That's somewhat speculative.
Okay.
And I had heard from other sources that the MS-13 was often contracted. I mean, the powers that be contract with MS-13 to do their dirty work. I don't know.
Let me interrupt for just a sec. That wouldn't surprise me, frankly. Nothing would surprise me nowadays. But I remember reading a column, and I want you to speak to this. This could be far off. I don't want to get into conspiracy theory or what have you. But I recall reading a column where allegedly there were two sets of feet that were seen at the time, allegedly two assailants, or two sets of feet of the assailants that were seen murdering Seth Rich, but they don't have their body images. They see Seth Rich drop to the ground, which is the only reason they knew that it was Seth Rich at the time. But all the camera got were their feet, which is ironic because the camera was above a building, on top of a building of some sort. Have you heard that at all?
Yes, I have heard that, and I believe that is actually true. I believe that the D.C. police have confirmed as much. The D.C. police have not been very helpful. What they did was to float the theory of the botched robbery, and for the media, that was enough. Oh, a botched robbery. So you have two guys. You're at 3:30 in the morning. You have one young guy, who's he may have resisted, and I wouldn't be surprised if he had. And they have the guns. They beat him up. They shoot him, and then they said, "Oh, well, we're not going to take any jewelry. We're not going to take his watch or wallet or anything." Yeah, that's a botched. If that's a robbery, robbers aren't that botched. I mean, they're not that bad. I mean, they make a living doing this stuff. They don't,
Yeah.
And his was the only murder in that neighborhood. It's a nice neighborhood. In I don't know, a year, months, I don't know, a long time. His was the only one. I mean, it stood out. It wasn't like the kind of neighborhood where people get shot all the time. So
that makes sense.
And that's pretty much where it stands right now. Clevenger is still hammering away, Ty Clevenger, the attorney, and trying to get more and more information. Now, one other notable figure involved is the legendary journalist Seymour Hersh.
Right.
Seymour Cy Hersh is the guy who broke My Lai, 50 years ago. He broke Abu Ghraib story, right? He recently broke the story about the United States being the ones to demolish the Nord Stream pipeline.
Yeah, I did a podcast on that, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
And Hersh was in contact with Ed Butowski, the guy originally involved. And what Butowski did is he taped the conversation. And in the conversation, Hersh said that the FBI report, which he admitted to not having seen, but he had a very reliable source inside the FBI. And Hirsch is a serious reporter and Pulitzer Prize winner, all that. He said that the report said that Rich, in fact, had been responsible for exfiltrating that information. That it had not been a Russian hack, and that that's the reason he was killed.
Yeah,
now,
Julia, and yeah, go ahead.
And that is what what Hirsch is, and I've heard the recording. He does say that. He kind of backtracked off it a little bit, but that information is out there. And
this is
yeah. Go ahead, sorry, Carl.
It's one of the reasons why I believe there's more to this story too. And you wrote about it in your column at AM Greatness. What was CrowdStrike doing with Seth Rich's laptop? Please go out and read that column. And again, you guys know me. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but we found out a lot about our government and why they should not be trusted, particularly the DOJ at this point. It's really sad what we're seeing occur right here in America. But the Washington Post reported the story on June 14th. This is whenever I see the media doing a cover up, so to speak, or just not really investigating, not being real journalists. Not only am I thankful for shows like my own and people
right.
like you, but it leads me to believe that there is a major cover up, whether it's out of fear, whether it's just because they're partisan hacks. But the Washington Post reported on June 14th, a couple of months after that the Russian government hackers penetrated the DNC, stole opposition research on Trump. So it's amazing to me that Hillary Clinton has this narrative. The Washington Post has this narrative. Yet the FBI, Robert Mueller, never investigated Seth Rich's laptop. And like you said, to this day, it's in CrowdStrike's hand, which is a DNC cybersecurity company, pretty much.
Yeah, right. And it's, CrowdStrike might have shared some of the information with the FBI, or may not have. We don't know. And what was interesting about that is the way the story was originally reported. The incident takes place in April. In June, the Washington Post writes something like a fair story. The headline suggests that they're not going after Hillary stuff; they're going after Trump. And or they're going after what the DNC has on Trump. But then immediately, Hillary forces spin this. This is critical because either the loss of this information will either validate the general opinion of Hillary as someone who's sloppy with national security secrets,
right?
Or we have to make it the sinister attack on American democracy by Russia.
Yeah.
And in a sense, to frame Donald Trump, the authorities had to frame Russia. And Russia, which had just a year before brokered the Iran deal on behalf of the Obama administration, and now has to become the main enemy. And if you want to lead from like the whole butterfly effect, where you just butterfly flaps its wings and then years later there's a typhoon, once they decide that Russia becomes the enemy, up until, if you remember, during the Obama administration, we had the reset button, and Joe Biden made that a special province, went to Russia, and encouraged investment in their Silicon Valley, all this stuff. Now Russia becomes the main enemy, and we have to continue to make it that enemy for the 4 years of the Trump administration to reconfirm his evil, because he's dealing with this evil empire, with evil Putin. And that leads us to the Crimean, to the war in Ukraine. Because now we can't negotiate with these people. We can't find peace. We have to have war, so there we are.
What short memories the American people have. It's the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton with the whole Russian reset, but all of a sudden it's Donald Trump. It's fascinating to me how this works. Let me read one of your paragraphs from the column, and I just want to get your take on this, Jack. You say, according to the Post, there was much CrowdStrike did not even pretend to know, including, quote, how the hackers got in, close quote. This is where Seth Rich comes into play. In a later Washington Post article, an unnamed confidant claimed that the June 14th Post article disturbed Rich. Oh my God, quote unquote, Rich reportedly said, we have a foreign entity trying to get involved in our elections. Do you think that Seth Rich really genuinely believed that, and so he wanted to get this information out to Julian Assange, or was this a CYA moment for Seth Rich because he was because he was the leaker, if you will, and he just kind of wanted that facade of?
I think it's B, because he's, let's face it, this article comes out 2 months after CrowdStrike has come in. Now, he would have known because they have his computer, right? He would have known that they've been auditing and reviewing, and that he would express surprise 2 months later. Oh my gosh, the Russians are behind this. No, right.
See, this makes me even more sense. I mean, honestly, this makes more sense. I genuinely believe that they took the guy out. I really do. Let me see. I had a bunch of questions here for you. I just want to get through them bullet point if I could. You already mentioned this, how Julian Assange referenced Seth Rich's murder, and basically how Seth Rich was a whistleblower. That's basically what Julian Assange mentioned in that Dutch interview. He didn't let the Dutch interviewer get away with it. And it also, I got to say this because I can recall Julian Assange WikiLeaks. I was very concerned about that. Felt like anyone that dealt with them were a traitor. Felt like Julian Assange should be shot and killed and all this kind of stuff. That's the way that I felt. Now I look at Julian Assange not as a hero. Snowden, the same thing. Edward Snowden. I don't look at these people as heroes, but at the same token, I'm giving them a lot more grace finding out how corrupt our DOJ and FBI are.
And Carl, I feel exactly the same. When Snowden first went over, and when Assange was, I thought Assange was just indiscriminate with the way he released information. I didn't trust Snowden's motives, but the more I know about both of them, the more I think they're the good guys in this story. And I think what shocked the Democrats, because they always thought Assange was one of theirs, right? Because he had been, leaking information about the Iraq War, et cetera. And now he's actually a truth teller. We can't have anything to do with him now. Who knows?
Kind of like an Elon Musk.
Yeah. I mean, exactly like that, right? You think he's one of yours, and then maybe he's not, because maybe he's taking that red pill, or maybe he knows, that he sees the world the way it is. Assange was probably seeing the world the way it was before we did, but no. And on their side, people were beginning to open their eyes on a whole host of subjects, and this, and especially COVID, which was, I think, for many people, their Waterloo moment, where they realized they'd been playing on the wrong team because their team had no interest in either saving lives or sharing truths.
Totally agree with that. I mean, it seems like basically, as you've written, this was an opportunity. This Seth Rich, getting rid of Seth Rich, if you will, murdering Seth Rich, CrowdStrike keeping his laptop, the FBI being totally disinterested. It made it extremely easy for Hillary Clinton and the DNC to completely change the narrative towards Trump. Trump is this big Russian guy. Russia helped Trump. Meanwhile, and we do learn later, although people don't care, the news has come out that obviously the Russia collusion hoax, all of that fell to pieces, but people still don't seem to care. It's the first narrative that people hear that they seem to stick with. Once that narrative is there, Trump colluded with Russia. Meanwhile, we know that it was Hillary Clinton colluding with Russia. If Seth Rich gets that information out, and if Seth Rich gets any information out that the DNC are trying to totally destroy Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton goes down. She doesn't win the presidency. And so they got to get rid of this guy. And it's obvious to me when we look at COVID, when we look at Obamacare, when we look at the people that just happen to die around the Clintons, all of this stuff, I'm telling you, all of this stuff, Jack, I was like, come on, stop with the conspiracy. I don't trust these people at all. I hate to say that about our government.
You're in good company. I don't know if you saw this, Carl, but a fellow named Jeff Kurth, who's a longtime New York Times reporter, gone independent, Pulitzer Prize winner, took this exhaustive study about basically the media's coverage of the whole Russia collusion hoax. And he's writing from the perspective of the establishment media. And he publishes it in the Columbia Journalism Review. It's 20,000 words long. And this is just a few weeks ago. And I read it. I mean, it took me several hours. I mean, but it was just a chock full of information about how the media distorted the story from the beginning, knowingly, falsely, gave himself Pulitzer Prizes for it in 2018.
Amazing.
And then when the story comes out, the truth tellers in the media, guys like Glenn Greenwald and Matt Taibbi and Barry Weiss and those independent types, said, this is incredible, And then it dies. It goes away. The major media do not even address it as though it didn't happen. It's as though one of their own just spilled the beans, and they just decide, well, we're going to make believe that he didn't spill the beans, and our people will be none the wiser, right?
Unbelievable, man. I got to tell you, Jack, this is good stuff. I'm going to be following you and just reading your work and seeing what you have to say. And I'm sure we'll have you back on as well. But guys, I'm going to encourage you, go to it's Cashill.com,
CASHILL.com. Okay. And I also do a podcast. It's called just Upstream Podcast. If you go to YouTube, it's probably the simplest way to find it.
Okay.
But Carl, I appreciate you having on. And it's always refreshing to have a host who knows the story, where you're not.
Well,
I don't have
listen,
to
I've been
it.
reading up on this stuff, and that's thanks to you and a couple of others. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want these stories to die. These people, in my opinion, I don't care about their political affiliation. They're Americans, and if somebody is murdered, and if our government has something to do with it, or if they're suspected to have something to do with it, they need to clear it up, and they need to get things right. That's justice. That's the rule of law. That's the American system. And if we allow this to happen to one American, it could happen to any one of us. So I appreciate you sticking to this story, Jack. I really do.
Hey, Carl, thanks for having me. Anytime, sir. Okay.
All right. Appreciate
Bye-bye.
it. You have a good one. All right, guys, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Don't forget to check out Jack's website, Cashill.com, CASHILL. Don't forget as well, please subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Also, our YouTube channel, The Carl Jackson Show on YouTube, social media, all things social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Getter, True Social, The Carl Jackson Show. Again, and don't forget our sponsors. Thank you, MyPillow.com. Make sure you check them out. Use the promo code Carl at MyPillow.com for discounts that are available up to 70%. Don't forget, they've got their new pillow, MyPillow 2.0, and for Patriots. Guys, protect your families. Keep your families safe. Keep your families fed. God knows what will happen in this environment. I mean, we're just living in crazy times, so just be prepared. I appreciate you tuning in today for this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. And did I say for Patriots, use the promo code Carl there too. I think I forgot to say that. So the promo code Carl for Patriots.com. But until next time, guys, I appreciate you tuning in. Don't grow weary doing good. God bless you.